Liam Lawson has grabbed his F1 opportunity with both hands in 2023. He's been given an unexpected opportunity as the driver that was the fourth choice for the AlphaTauri team at the beginning of the season. But since he's got into the AlphaTauri car, he's shown why he deserves a chance at racing for that team full time. So how can he get onto the grid next year, and is he now more likely to be on the grid than not next season? Let's have a look. My name's Andy and this is Behind the Drive. The AlphaTauri Dilemma. AlphaTauri lost their benchmark driver in Pierre Gasly coming into this season. Since then, the team seems lost. They're at the bottom of the standings, and while Yuki Tsunoda has gained significant plaudits for his performances early on in 2023, it seems like he's not yet in a position to lead the team in his third season in the sport. The team itself is in a state of change. Going into next year, they're seeking new sponsors with Hugo Boss and Adidas being rumoured interested parties. This change for the team will likely see them move closer to Red Bull in terms of taking car parts where the regulations allow, and it may well see the team return to where they were when it was Toro Rosso, being a consistent midfield challenger. During the early 2010s, the team would tend to only keep drivers at the team for 2 seasons, with a move up or move on attitude to their talent. During this time, so many drivers joined the grid, including many that are still on the grid today, such as Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz, and Daniel Ricciardo, just to name a few. The Red Bull Junior team has been a critical route for new drivers to get onto the F1 grid in recent times, and this is unlikely to change anytime soon. Having said this, Red Bull took Nick de Vries on for this season, a driver from outside of their junior team. Of course, in hindsight, this was a mistake, especially given just how good Liam Lawson has been since he came in to replace Daniel Ricciardo in the last few races. But I believe the Red Bull setup offers huge value for the F1 sport as a whole in terms of bringing new drivers into the category and giving them their first opportunity. The AlphaTauri team has always been a testbed for drivers, and so it raises the question of who should be driving for the team in 2024. Right now, Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda are the 2 drivers contracted, and the most likely outcome is that both will be retained for next year. This creates an environment where both AlphaTauri drivers will be highly experienced. Tsunoda will be going into his 4th season, and Ricciardo has been in the sport for well over a decade. This raises the question of whether the AlphaTauri team has a new purpose regarding Red Bull. I believe it makes sense for the AlphaTauri team to not necessarily be a route just for new drivers, even though this is critical for the sport as a whole, but instead it can be a place where the next best alternative drivers could race in the event that a Red Bull driver couldn't compete or leaves that team. This is where the AlphaTauri setup can offer the most value, and it ensures that the top team doesn't end up with drivers with very little experience, just as they faced in 2019 when Pierre Gasly and Alex Albon took on that second driver role. For Red Bull, this is the best outcome, but at the same time, young drivers like Liam Lawson are showing that having these more experienced drivers doesn't necessarily mean that they have the best possible lineup. The best rookies tend to be highly impressive in their first season. Recent examples of this include Oscar Piastri this year, Charles Leclerc in 2018, Lando Norris in 2019 and Max Verstappen back in 2015. In the case of these drivers, their talent was clear immediately. And while they didn't beat all of their teammates in that initial season, they showed some clear promise and why they were clearly deserving of a spot on the F1 grid. I would argue that Liam Lawson is a driver that's following this exact trend. In his 3 Grand Prix at the time of recording, he's consistently pushed for points and has held his own on the grid. This was highlighted by his 9th place finish in Singapore, where he secured 2 points for the best race finish of any AlphaTauri driver this season. So not only has he got up to speed quickly, but he's also showing improvements and gaining confidence. Based on this limited evidence, you could say that he's been better than Tsunoda, though the Japanese driver has failed to start the race in Italy and failed to finish in Singapore in an incident that was completely outside of his control. Either way though, Lawson's performances have been highly impressive, and his performances need to be in the same discussion as those drivers mentioned previously. But there's still a risk he may not make it onto the F1 grid in a Red Bull-owned seat. How can Red Bull best support Lawson? Red Bull's decision regarding their AlphaTauri lineup is always a cause of speculation through each silly season. Right now, it seems like the most likely outcome for the team's 2024 lineup will be to retain both Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo. In my view, this would be a mistake. Last year we saw that it took just a single race for Nick de Vries to quickly become the best driver that everyone wanted for this year. He ended up going to AlphaTauri, and sure, this was a mistake with hindsight, but Liam Lawson will have had at least 4 races with the team, and so is surely a driver that should be considered to join them given he's performing so well at the moment. In my view, Lawson deserves a seat in that team next year. He's done well in F2, has impressed in both Super Formula and F1 testing sessions, and he's now delivered at such short notice in the top tier of motorsport. Not only this, but he delivered points in one of the worst cars on the grid at one of the toughest races on the calendar in Singapore. Lawson is a talented driver, and even if AlphaTauri is no longer the proving ground for Red Bull Juniors, then I still believe he would be a better option for Red Bull to keep in the team when it comes to looking at their long-term driver lineup in the main team. Right now, Max Verstappen is contracted to Red Bull and has no reason to leave. Sergio Perez is also contracted for next season, and while he's had times where he was disappointing in 2023, he's done enough to be pretty comfortable in second place in the Drivers' Championship. Having said this, Perez is 33 years old, and while plenty of other older drivers are continuing to have success in Formula 1 and proving that age is just a number, I'm sure the Red Bull management will have one eye on the future of that second Red Bull seat. What they need in that position is a driver that is strong enough to compete regularly and one that can support Verstappen in the event that the team faces more competition in the World Championships. For me, a young driver like Lawson will fit this requirement perfectly. Ricciardo doesn't fit this need as he's older than Perez, and I question if Yuki Tsunoda has impressed enough in his third year in the sport to warrant the promotion into the Red Bull team. Don't get me wrong, Tsunoda's 2023 season has been good, but while he's been very consistent as a driver, his results haven't been exceptional, and I still believe that Pierre Gasly would have achieved more points from the AlphaTauri car this season. For me, based on everything Red Bull have done in the past with their driver lineup, it doesn't seem likely that Tsunoda will ever get the call-up. Red Bull is a team that's been burned in the past by putting inexperienced drivers in the top seat. It's impossible for us to know what their current attitude is to their future driver lineup and what it looks like beyond Sergio Perez. But for me, it doesn't seem likely that either Ricciardo or Tsunoda could take on that role. So why not bring Lawson in to continue his development and prepare him for the role potentially in the future? This way, the team has an opportunity to see Lawson over the course of the year, and if he continues based on his form so far, he'll quickly be part of the conversation with the likes of Verstappen, Leclerc and Norris regarding his rookie year. It's becoming increasingly likely that Lawson will be put into a reserve driver role for Red Bull in 2024. For me, a reserve driver role is simply not enough for the New Zealand driver. He's been so impressive over the last few races and has shown that it hasn't just been a one-off performance. Right now, if he isn't confirmed to be joining AlphaTauri long term, there's only one realistic potential suitor for Lawson. Williams is a team that has gone with a rookie driver in Logan Sargent this year, and, to be honest, the American driver has performed well below expectations. I believe there are several more talented drivers not in Formula 1 that deserve an opportunity. It seems like Williams are looking to make a change, and they have been in discussions with Felipe Drugovich, the current F2 champion. It would be great to see the Brazilian driver in the sport and given the chance to impress, but I also believe Lawson's performances shouldn't go unnoticed by the Williams team. Lawson would be a great driver to pair with Albon, and given he's now proven he has an ability to take a weak car to points, it seems like he would be a good fit for Williams and take them to the next level. Alex Albon has thrived in the Williams environment, having come out of the Red Bull team setup, and so I believe Lawson could follow a similar path and give Williams a very strong driver lineup for 2024. One thing I know for sure is that if Liam Lawson does not have a full-time drive for 2024, then I won't know what more he could have done to get that full-time seat that he desires. He's a talented driver, and the opportunity to bring him into the sport full-time should not be missed.